Hello aspirants, welcome to another session of the daily newspaper analysis. This video is brought to you by the Gurudev Academy. My name is Ashwin. So firstly we look at the question, these are the topics that we are going to look at. We look at the questions that were given in the previous videos. Which part of our constitution deals with the national flag and its national honor? So the right answer here is fundamental duty. Okay, so in yesterday's newspaper, they have given this that some one person that is has appreciated the new amendments that has been brought to the Flag Code of India. So please look at the what is the latest amendment that has been passed under the Flag Code Act of 2002. Then in which of the following areas do you not find Siberian ibex? See, it is not found in Sikkim. Okay, we find it in only the northwestern Himalayas in India. Please look at the IUCN status of Siberian ibex. What is the IUCN status, as well as in which all other areas do we find this Siberian ibex? Then Long March rocket belongs to which country? The answer is China. So we saw this yesterday in the newspaper that China is trying to launch its second space station module. So it was used it used its the most powerful rocket, that is your Long March rocket. So it belongs to China. So firstly, we look at this article that is talking about the backsliding on climate action. See, we signed the 196 countries here. They signed something called as Paris Agreement. Well, firstly, before looking at this article, we'll just look at few of the points. Firstly, you have to know what Paris Agreement is. Paris Agreement was brought in to replace the Kyoto Protocol. Paris Agreement mainly deals with bringing down the overall temperature, that the rising temperature that has been caused due to the greenhouse emissions. So Paris Agreement, firstly, it is legally binding. Okay, it is legally binding agreement. Legally binding, we mean that every country which signs this agreement has to bind to its targets. Whatever targets are mentioned in the article, in the agreement, they have to follow those targets. Secondly, it is signed by 196 countries. See, previously we had this thing that previous administration of US tried to pull out of this Paris Agreement. US was out of the agreement, but once the new administration has been elected, US is back in this agreement. Then the main goal of Paris Agreement here, the main goal is to limit the global warming, okay, to well below 2 degrees Celsius. Okay, 2 degrees Celsius, the global temperatures overall, the average global temperatures have to be brought down by 2 degrees here. Then when we look at the highest greenhouse gas emitters, okay, among the highest, then the firstly we have China. Okay, China contributes to 30% of the overall greenhouse gas emission that happens. Secondly, we have US, and then European Union. India ranks somewhere around 5th or 6th. Okay, India ranks 6th mostly, but it depends year on year. The emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions, whatever is happening, it depends on that. Then the goal here of this Paris Agreement is, another goal is net zero. Okay, by net zero we mean that all greenhouse gases that are there in the atmosphere right now, they have to be removed by 2050. Okay, by 2050 the greenhouse gas that is present in the atmosphere has to be completely removed. It has to be the emissions have to be stopped, as well as the already whatever the emissions have been done, they have to be removed. India here has said that the target of net zero, okay, it will be achieved by India by 2070. Okay, it was revised recently. India wanted to commit by 2050, but in the recent COP that happened in Glasgow, India has said that it will achieve the net zero target in 2070. Then when we look at the article, what has been the recent developments when it comes to climate actions. See, recently the current scenario, when we look at the European Union, the European countries are backtracking. Backtracking, I mean by whatever the commitments they had committed earlier, they are falling back on those commitments. Like, see, there have been scenarios. One of the scenarios in Europe, when we look at it, it has been that whatever the emission cuts that were taking place, that had to take place in agriculture, some of the farmers of these European countries are opposing it. Okay, and again, the war on Russia, okay, the war Russia and Ukraine this has also increased the conflict, and this has increased the use of fossil fuels in European countries. When we look at US again has been realigning, okay, realigning its West Asia policy. Okay, West Asia policy, that is US again is back in West Asia for oil. Okay, oil. We recently saw Joe Biden visiting these West Asian countries. mainly the agreements here were based on resupply, okay, reinvigorating the oil supplies to US again. Again, when we look at it, these are the main developed countries in our in the world right now. When we look at US and Europe, and these countries when they were developing, okay, so you have to understand the difference between a developed country and developing country. Okay, when it comes to greenhouse gas. See, when these countries, the developed countries, when they were having this economic boom, when there was a lot of industrialization going on, they were emitting a lot of greenhouse gas. Okay, so it is a burden on firstly on the developed countries to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. But developing countries which are developing now, like consider the case of India and China. Okay, China is still considered as a developing country. When we are developing, we are ought to, like, we are going to release a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So the burden on us to achieve net zero is very less than when we compared it to the developing countries, compared to the developed countries. But when we look at the current scenarios of inflation, the current scenarios of war, it is again pushing these developed countries to go back on the commitments that they had made on reducing the use of fossil fuels, and they are going back to increasing the use of fossil fuels now. That is why we have a step back. That is why these countries are taking a step back. Then, when we look at what kind of backtracking is being done on the pledges here, firstly, the US has downgraded its pledge. When it rejoined the Paris Agreement, as I told you, the US has been allowed to downgrade its pledge. Like whatever the net zero commitment the US was doing here, it is going to downgrade it. It is not going to achieve it in a specific year, or it is going to neglect it for a few years until the inflation stabilizes in its country. Then we have the Western countries. Okay, Western countries have already started downgrading their pledges. Like for example, Germany. Okay, Germany, which was expected to reduce its fossil fuels and increase the use of renewable sources. What has happened post war that is going on is because of the non-availability, okay, non-availability of the technology. See, when these countries promised in 2020 about the Paris Agreement, they did not think or did not have a proper technology, okay, to completely change their system from fossil fuels to renewable sources. Now that the war has started, and now that the resources, the fossil fuels are not available for these European countries very easily, and they don't have a technology to transfer to renewable energy, they have increased the use of fossil fuels again. Okay, that is what is happening in the Western countries. Then recently, when the COP happened in that is Conference of Parties happened in Glasgow, India made a statement where it said that we have to phase down from phase out. Okay, that is the Western countries are targeting phase down than the phase out. That is, phase down means they are going to reduce the use of fossil fuels and not completely eliminate. Okay, by phase out we mean that we are going to completely eliminate the use of fossil fuels. But what the European countries are doing, the European countries are phase down. Phase down here means that they are going to reduce. They are not going to completely eliminate. What can developing countries do here when we look at the overall crux? Because it is the burden on the developed countries. It is firstly important that the developed countries have to stop using the fossil fuels. But here, when the developed countries are not able to comply with the targets, the burden falls more on the developing countries. So developing countries came out with one statement, that is your cross-regional statement on global net zero. Okay, this was made by the global south countries like India, China and other African countries. So what is the statement says about? The statement says about, firstly, the developed countries peaking will be early. As I told earlier, the developed countries have started industrialization very early than the developing countries, and in the time when this industrialization was happening, there was a lot of greenhouse emission that was happening. Okay, and that is why developed countries have to peak first. Why? When we say greenhouse gas peaking, okay, peaking, we means that after 1 year, okay, like consider 2030, okay, at one point of the year, the greenhouse gas has to be maximum, and when it is peaking at 2030, it has to go on reducing. It has to go on reducing, okay, that is peaking. Why? What we mean by peaking is that at any year, the greenhouse gas will have to reach the maximum, and once it is there, it has to start decreasing the use of it. So when we look at it, the global peaking, okay, the global peaking had to happen by 2025. By 2025, we had to reach the maximum level of fossil fuel usage and we had to cut down. But looking at the present scenario, it is not going to happen. So what does the statement here, the cross-sectional statement says here is that global peaking should be the priority and not individual peaking. Okay, that is global net zero and not individual net zero. The countries here that are pledging that, like for India, we are pledging that the net zero we will start by 2070. Okay, 2070 will be the year when we will be achieving net zero. But the countries should not be concentrating on the individual efforts. They have to concentrate on the global efforts. Fine. And they also say about the net negative. Okay, the developed countries should not only be concentrating on the net zero. By net zero we mean that complete elimination. We also have to focus on net negative. Net negative we mean here by the greenhouse gas, okay, that is being emitted by the fossil fuels. It has to be, the fossil fuels have to be reduced. They have to be replaced by a renewable sources. Okay. So these are the cross-sectional statements that are given. So we are seeing the extremes of climate change. We have seen the extremes in India as well, when we saw the monsoon temperatures were higher than the normal temperatures during the summer temperatures. Fine. So this is the climate change is real. The impacts we are seeing in our day-to-day life. So we have to see how the global leaders act on it and what are the actions that they are going to take to achieve the net zero as quick as possible. Moving on. This is another article. See, I always tell you to read few important editors when they write editorial in Hindu newspaper, and M.K. Narayanan is a very important personality for India. So please, whenever he writes any article, do read the article. The article always turns up to be interesting. Fine. Here they are talking about a chaos in global world order. See, what was the present global order or what was the global order before? The global order was mainly dominated by the US. US was the only global power at one point of time, and right now so is it. But right now what is happening is that there has been a lot of chaos. There has been a lot of chaos all over the world. Firstly, this is how we are going to do this article, dissect this article. Firstly, we will look at what the Western analysts have to say. The Western analysts here are concentrating mainly on the conflict that is going on in Russia and Ukraine, and it is not concentrating on the other conflicts that are happening in the other parts of the world. As you are aware, there has been a conflict in lot of areas. Like we can consider the conflict that is going on right now in Taiwan when it comes to China. When we look at the issues Iran has with Saudi Arabia, West Asian issues. Then when we look at your Indian Ocean, okay, your Indo-Pacific Ocean, which the China dominates, and US wants to regain its dominance in this region. Fine. And Africa as well, we have conflicts that is happening in the North African regions. So these are some of the conflicts, but the Western analysts are mainly concentrated on the issues that are happening in the Russia-Ukraine war, and they are completely subsiding, or they are not looking into the other issues that is happening, which is not better, which is not good for the global world order. That is what the editor is trying to say. Nextly, the domestic conflicts in European countries. See, there is a lot of domestic conflict happening. For example, in UK, there has been a change in leadership. In French as well, the Macron administration has not been able to handle its policies properly. Even Germany has been having troubles with its domestic policies. So when domestic conflicts are taking place in European countries, it exerts a lot of pressure on the global world order. Fine. So this is another thing. Secondly, it talks about the topology of geopolitics has changed. Okay, previously the topology was mainly concentrated on the US as well as the Russia axis, because these were the two countries which were forming two blocks, and these were the two countries which were trying to gain each other's territories. Fine. So this is and wanted to dominate the world order. But right now the topology has changed, because there is one big player that has emerged in the global world order, that is China. Okay, when we look at China, okay, China is having a good relation with Russia. Again, previously as well, during the Cold War, China had always maintained a good relation with Russia. So when we look at the overall relation, China and Russia are trying to dominate world geopolitics here. China and Russia together have had a good conference with these West Asian countries. China and Russia have together had these good talks with Afghanistan region with Taliban. Okay, so China and Russia, when we look at it, are trying to cancel out the domination that US has in geopolitics. Fine. And when we look at West Asia, again, as I mentioned earlier, West Asia becomes very important. Previously, we had something called as Abraham Accord. Okay, so this Abraham Accord has brought the Israel close with some of the countries in West Asia. Fine. So when such development are being taking place, another development that has been taking place is the economic impact of Ukraine-Russia war. Okay, economic impact of Russia-Ukraine war, as you all know. Okay, firstly, the inflation rates have increased all over the country, as well as the food grain prices have increased, as well as there has been food shortage noticeable in few of the other countries. Fine. So these are some of the things. These are some of the things that are causing a change in the established global world order. The established global world order was mainly devised on peace. Okay, it was mainly devised on peace, and it was mainly devised on such that if some country is showing aggression, it was silenced by the use of economic sanctions. But as we see now, even though a lot of economic sanctions have been put on Russia when a war is going on, the war has not stopped, and Russia is getting more aggressive by each sanctions. So this is not helping at all. When we look at India, okay, what is the India's role here? So India has to play a very careful and balancing role, because India has been having a good relation both with the both blocks here. Consider the Russia-China angle. Russia-China angle, when we look at, Russia and China are already together, and China has started has always had this aim of sidelining India and having a dominance in Asian region. And when we look at Russia, is our natural partner, is our natural friend. So we have to look at what happens when there is a conflict between India and China, and how Russia will act on it. Then when we look at Taliban Afghanistan, this is another main area for India, the main concern for India. Taliban Afghanistan, India has, when this administration was established of Taliban, India at the start were very hesitant to have any talks with Taliban. You have to remember one thing, that India has invested a lot in Afghanistan. India has built the new parliament. India has built something called a Salma Dam. Okay, so the investment of India in Afghanistan is huge. So we have to see what are the, so recently there have been informal talks that have been happening with Taliban. So we have to see what the progress will be. Then, okay, the recent event that happened in Sri Lanka when the government was overthrown. So the new administration, we have to look at what are the relation, how the relation will be built up between this new government, because the previous government that we had, we did not have a cordial relation, we just had a correct relation with them. We saw what happened when the East Coast terminal of Sri Lanka, which was to be built by one of the Indian company, it was transferred to Chinese government. Okay, so China has already influence around our neighborhood. So we have to wait and watch what India's steps are when it comes to the new global order. Coming back to this, at the last, author talks about the nuclear deterrence. Okay, here, by nuclear deterrence, we means that the use of nuclear weapons. India has no first use policy, and India has completely banned the testing of any nuclear weapons now. So the author says that such policies are not helping India to develop its nuclear technology. That is why here the author asks India to take help of its friends to develop its nuclear energy. So this is a very simple article. I want you all to read it and please read it. Okay, it is a very simple article. You will understand it at one reading. Then moving on. Okay, there are two articles today in the Hindu Explained. We'll just look at it quickly. Very easy articles. You can understand it at your own. Firstly, it talks about the private sector involvement in your space industry. So, firstly, why is space industry important? It is important because, firstly, the satellite connectivity. Okay, the satellite connectivity, it will connect to the unconnected areas. Like there was a report published under World Economic Forum. It says that by using the internet and the satellite connectivity, there is a possibility of connecting around 49% of the unconnected people. It also talks about your climate change. Okay, the climate change alerts. Okay, it can be received at regional level, state level, national level, and preparations can be made if any calamity is going to happen due to climate changes. Then we have economy. Okay, economy boost. Mainly when we look at it, the private sectors the private sector players in our space industry are mainly in the telecom industry. That in turn boosts the overall Indian economy of our Indian economy. Then what is the current space market of India? Okay, current space market is 6th largest in the world. Okay, it is the 6th largest in the world, and the right now the space industry is around 7 billion, and it is trying to grow around 50 billion by 2024. Mainly now when we look at the startups that are involved in this private sector when it comes to Indian space industries, they are mainly targeting space debris management. Okay, that is the area they want to get involved in. Space debris is again your defunct satellites or space junks, whatever is there. Okay, those are all your space debris. Then what are the regulations of private sectors in India? Okay, when we look at regulations, there is something called as InSpace, that is your Indian Space Promotion and Authorization Center. Okay, this InSpace is responsible for promoting and licensing the private players. Okay, whatever the non-government private enterprises which are involved in Indian space industries. So the licensing that has to be done, it will be done by the InSpace here. And also ISRO is also involved in the regulations as it is common. So ISRO, what is the work of ISRO here? The work of ISRO here is testing, quality, protocol as well as documentation of these new private industries. If they want to get involved in the space sector, they have to take the help of ISRO in terms of testing, quality, protocols as well as documentation. Then along with this, we also have something called as NSIL, that is your New Space Industry Limited. Okay, New Space Industry Limited. What is the use here? So whatever ISRO technology they have developed, okay, ISRO's technology, whatever is being developed, the technology will be transferred to the industries. Okay, the technology will be transferred to the industries here from ISRO. Fine. So this is in brief. So here the again I think there has been a discussion in the parliament about this private sector involvement. So whenever such in future if any other information comes up, we will discuss again. Then another article that has come up regarding your this one in Hindu Explained. Here see, we have done this thing, we have done this in detail, what are the fresh, why there is a need for new bail law and all. We'll just look at it briefly. Firstly, you have to understand what section 41 and section 41A is of IPC. So section 41 says that circumstances, it gives a list, scenarios of arrest without warrant. Okay, it gives the list of arrest without warrant. Section 41A, okay, section 41A talks about a notice before arrest. So what the court has said, the Supreme Court has said that if the police or any other investigating agency, if it violates these two articles, okay, of IPC, if it violates these two section of IPC, then bail is compulsory. Okay, so whenever an arrest will be done, they have to comply with these two sections of IPC. Then when we look at the article here, firstly we look at what is arrest. Okay, according to CRPC, arrest is something like which restrains your liberties, which takes out your liberties. Okay, that is called as arrest. In 1994 case, Jogendra Kumar case, okay, 1994 Jogendra Kumar case, the court says that arrest is harming the reputation and self-esteem of a person. Again, in Arnish Kumar case, the court says that the arrest that takes place, it is humiliating and curtails freedom. Fine, this is what arrest is, and these are the views of the Supreme Court. Here, the latest guidelines that are being issued, the latest guidelines are being issued on July 11th. Okay, July 11th. Under SK Antil versus CBI case. Okay, that are the guidelines. We look at what the guidelines are. Okay, the guidelines are that there has to be a separate bail act. We have done this in a previous video. Please go and check it out. Then bail to be disposed of in 2 weeks. Okay, the bail applications that have been submitted, they have to be disposed of. The decisions have to be taken in 2 weeks. And anticipatory bail, okay, anticipatory bail, what is there, that has to be disposed of. The application has to be disposed of in 6 weeks. The writer here, they have also given up what are the steps needed. Okay, what are the steps needed so that the bail becomes a norm and not the jail. Right now in India, jail is the norm, bail is not the norm, but what the Supreme Court has said in previous judgments is that bail has to be the norm and not jail. Then what are the steps that has to be taken? Firstly, compliance of center and state with the court guidelines. So whatever the apex court, the Supreme Court, whatever the guidelines has been issued, firstly the state and the center have to comply with those guidelines. Then special court, okay, the high courts here can establish special courts to dispose of these bail applications with the permission of the state governments here. It also talks about vacant posts and infrastructure needs. Okay, so vacant posts and infrastructure needs, we use special codes. In special codes, whatever the vacant posts are there, they have to be filled very quickly. Then when we look at the case of under trials, okay, so the bail plea, the bail application, the most sufferers are the under trials here. So what does the guideline says about under trials? Firstly, section 440. Okay, the section 440 which says that amount of bond. So if someone has to be released on bail, a bond amount has to be assigned. Okay, so whatever the bail amount is there, whatever the bond amount is there, that can be reduced, because most of these under trials are poor people. They are not economically well off people. So to reduce the load of in jails as well, the section 440 will be changed and the amount of in the bonds will be reduced. It talks about SC can reduce the bail amount as well. Similarly, okay, as the bond amount, the bail amount should also be reduced. Then section 436A. Okay, section 436A, here again it's what the court is saying about 436A is that if a person is not able to get a bail, okay, so whatever the term he has served in the jail as a under trial for any offense, if he has served half the trial, okay, if he has served half the punishment of whatever offense he has done, then he should be released. That these are some of the guidelines that the court has issued. We will look ahead if the government in this present session or in the future session comes up with Bail Act. So that's all. That's all from this video. So do follow us on the social media handles, YouTube, Telegram, Instagram, as well as on Facebook. Do write your answers in the comment section for the questions that will be posted at the end. Thank you.